I trusted my therapist to guide me through grief, until I discovered he'd been manipulating me all along. Now I must expose his dark past to save us all. I never imagined that seeking help would lead me into a nightmare. My name is Eliana Rivers, I'm 26, and when my father died in a sudden car accident, I felt my world collapse. My mother, Vivian, and I were left adrift, our home silent, our hearts heavy with guilt and unanswered questions. Family dinners turned into awkward silences. Tears became the only constant. After weeks of sleepless nights and panic attacks, a close friend recommended I see a counselor at one organization downtown. I found Dr. Felix Carmichael, 32, whose website promised compassionate, trauma-informed care. I was desperate for relief. I arrived the first Tuesday under a slate-gray sky. His office felt warm and safe, soft rugs, earth-tone walls, a gently bubbling water fountain. He greeted me with a professional smile. "Eliana, I'm sorry for your loss," he said, voice low and soothing. "This must be very difficult." I nodded, clutching my mug of chamomile tea. He invited me to sit. "Tell me about your father." The dam broke. I spoke of childhood memories. Dad's booming laughter, Saturday fishing trips, his gentle coaching when I learned to drive. I confessed my regrets, not calling more, not hugging longer, not asking if he felt okay. Dr. Carmichael listened without interruption, nodding. When I paused, he said, "That was very brave, Eliana. You're doing important work by naming your feelings." In our early sessions, he taught me grounding techniques and journaling prompts. I felt a fragility in my chest ease, like someone had placed a steady hand on my shoulder. He encouraged me to write letters to Dad, burn them afterward, so unspoken words could finally be released. The first time I slept through the night without nightmares, I believed I'd found hope. After 3 months, he proposed a new exercise, the relationship diary. "Eliana, grief distorts close relationships. I want you to record daily interactions with your mother. Note your interpretations, her reactions, and what you both said. We'll review the patterns and repair communication channels." I was hesitant. Grief had already torn us apart, but he framed it as healing. I agreed, and he handed me a soft leather notebook, stamped with his insignia. That week, I logged every conversation. Our morning good mornings, my gentle check-ins, her pulled-away responses, the twinge of anger when she snapped at a silence. I underlined key phrases. "I'm fine. I can't talk. I don't know what to say." Each entry felt like a confession, too private for anyone but me. In our next session, he circled passages in red ink. "Notice the pattern. You push her for answers, she retreats. We need to reframe your approach. Empathic mirroring." He drew a simple loop on his whiteboard. 1. Express empathy. 2. Mirror wording. 3. Validate experience. 4. Invite response. He coached me. "Say, Mom, I feel your sorrow, and I'm here when you want to share. Then wait." I practiced at home. The first night, I approached Vivian in the kitchen and used his phrase. Her tense shoulders slumped. She exhaled a sob. We cried together, tears that felt both painful and liberating. I praised Dr. Carmichael for guiding me toward real connection. By month 5, our sessions delved into deeper territory. One afternoon, he said, "Eliana, to fully heal, you must confront unresolved anger toward your mother. I'd like to hold a, quote, a conflict session. You and Vivian face your wounds while I mediate." My heart lurched. Confrontation felt dangerous, but his confidence persuaded me. At our next appointment, Vivian sat stiffly beside me on his plush couch. Dr. Carmichael stood between us. "Eliana, begin by naming your disappointment," he urged. I hesitated, voice trembling. "Mom, you shut me out when I needed you most." Vivian's eyes snapped open, tears brimming. Dr. Carmichael prompted her. "Vivian, tell Eliana how her accusations hurt you." Vivian's voice cracked. "I was lost in my grief. You blamed me for everything." Our exchange escalated. Anger, guilt, raw emotion, all playing out under his calm direction. When he finally called for an apology and reconciliation, I left feeling hollow. His structured conflict felt like forced theater, not true healing. In the days after, I noticed subtle shifts. He began texting me between sessions. "Don't forget to mirror your mother today," or "Remember to practice vulnerability exercise." His tone felt less supportive and more controlling. He requested full access to my diary files, every page. I shared them, trusting his process. Then, one morning he said, "Eliana, you might consider recording your calls with Vivian. Audio data will help us analyze emotional tone." My throat tightened. Recording private conversations felt invasive, but I rationalized it. If Dad could speak again, I'd want him to understand everything. I reluctantly agreed. I recorded a brief call. My voice gentle, her responses wary. He played it back, pausing at each fragility. "See how your tone undermines your statement? And her silence speaks volumes." He labeled my sadness self-sabotage. The critiques stung, but I trusted him. By month 7, his requests grew bolder. He asked for my phone logs, claiming he needed to verify frequency of mother-daughter calls. I balked. No therapist had that right. Yet he said, "You gave me permission for comprehensive care." When I refused, he looked disappointed. I felt guilty, as if I'd abandoned my progress. I began questioning him. I searched licensing databases. No record of Felix Carmichael. Nothing but a shell profile at one organization. Frustrated, I Googled image results, found an old photo of a Dr. Samuel Kade, barred years ago for boundary violations and emotional exploitation. The face matched Carmichael. He'd changed his name. My pulse raced. I printed the PDF of the board's disciplinary hearing. It detailed dozens of allegations. Patients manipulated into dependency, private data accessed illegally, unlicensed practice. I clutched the pages as if they were lifelines. At our next session, I slid them across his desk. "Who are you, really?" He leaned back, expression cold. "An old rumor." "Irrelevant." I pressed, voice shaking. "You were Dr. Kade. You lied to me." He smiled thinly. "Trust the process, Eliana." Something inside snapped. Update 1. When I slammed my coat on the floor after that fateful session, I resolved 2 things. I would never return to Dr. Carmichael, and I would uncover every corner of his deceit. But walking out of his office into the cold spring air, my relief mingled with fear. If he truly was Dr. Samuel Kade reborn, what lengths would he go to silence me? Gathering evidence. That evening, I pored over the PDF of the licensing board's decision against Dr. Kade. Page after page described manipulative tactics, forced recordings, invasive data collection, psychological coercion. My hands trembled. I opened my laptop and searched every alias: Felix Carmichael, Samuel Kade, Dr. F. Carmichael, Dr. S. Kade. Each search netted fragments: old forum posts warning of boundary crossings, a single Yelp review from a patient who felt trapped. I printed everything: licensing transcripts, a grainy photo linking Kade's old clinic to Carmichael's current office, patient testimonials. My basement floor became a crime scene mosaic of documents. I realized I needed allies. I emailed Talia Rodriguez, attaching redacted proofs and pleading for help. She replied within minutes. "Meet me at my place tomorrow. I'll bring Marisol," forming a plan. At Talia's apartment the next morning, her roommate Marisol Cruz, my go-to attorney, stood armed with legal pads. They crowded around the dining table, cluttered with coffee mugs and printouts. Marisol tapped a page. "He's guilty of unlicensed practice, fraud, and breach of confidentiality. We can file criminal complaints and a civil suit. But first you need to notify the state board in every jurisdiction he's operated." He used at least 3 aliases across 2 states. Talia chimed in. "And we need to warn his current patients. Let's set up a secure anonymous website. StopTherapyAbuse.com. Survivors can share and find resources." I nodded. "I'll write my story. You both handle the legal filings." Marisol smiled. Also, will send a letter to his organization, demand his removal and internal review. They can't claim ignorance once they see documentation. Within hours, we divided tasks. I drafted my first-hand account, scrubbing, identifying details of others. Talia registered the domain and secured a private server. Marisol drafted complaint letters to the licensing board and local prosecutor's office. The first takedown. 2 days later, I sat in a local cafe, laptop open to my drafted post. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Greater than, I was a patient of Dr. Felix Carmichael at one organization. Over 7 months, he manipulated my grief, accessed my private data without consent, and forced invasive exercises under false pretenses. His real identity is Dr. Samuel Kade, previously disciplined for psychological abuse. I filed this warning so others can avoid his predatory tactics. I paused, heart pounding. Talia peered over my shoulder. It's powerful. Hit publish. I clicked submit. Within minutes, confirmation. The post was live. I copied links into my social feeds and private support groups. That evening, I reviewed the site's dashboard. 50 visits. By morning, 36 anonymous survivors had shared stories, cases eerily similar to mine. One message read, "He took my session notes and twisted them to control me." Another, "I lost my savings following his advice." The scale of his abuse hit me. I was not alone. The formal complaints. On Thursday, Marisol and I delivered bound complaint packets to the state board. A stern clerk stamped each envelope. Received, April 14th. The board's front desk glowed sterile under fluorescent lights. Marisol whispered, "They have 30 days to respond." Next, Marisol met with a local assistant district attorney, handing over a folder. The ADA reviewed metadata showing unauthorized access to my phone logs, a potential felony. He promised to open a preliminary inquiry. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt buoyed by progress. The law could protect me, yet I still worried. Would Dr. Carmichael strike back? A warning letter. That evening, I sent an email to the organization's director. Greater than subject. Urgent, therapist misconduct. Greater than dear director. Greater than attached documentation shows that Dr. Felix Carmichael is practicing under false credentials and has engaged in unethical and illegal behavior. I request immediate suspension and a full internal investigation. Greater than respectfully. Greater than a concerned former patient. Eton. I hit send and exhaled. A reply pinged moments later. An auto-response promising review within 48 hours. I braced for their reaction. A thinly veiled threat. 2 days later, as I prepared for my usual morning meeting with my mother, my phone buzzed with a text. Greater than nice expose. But be careful what you dig up. Not everything is as it seems. Unknown. My pulse raced. A threat. I stared at the message, mind spinning through possibilities. Dr. Carmichael had my number, but so did countless others. Was this him, or someone protecting him? I forwarded the text to Marisol. She frowned. We'll inform the ADA. This could be witness intimidation. I nodded, swallowing dread. The fight was real. Over this phase of our campaign, I had published my story and attracted survivor testimonials. Filed formal complaints with licensing boards and prosecutors. Notified Dr. Carmichael's organization, prompting an internal review. Received an anonymous threat, confirming the dangers of exposing him. Update 2. When the organization's director confirmed Dr. Carmichael's immediate suspension, a tight knot of relief and determination settled in my chest. His official email, worded carefully to avoid liability, stated, "Greater than subject, interim suspension notice. Greater than dear Ms. Rivers, greater than we have received and reviewed your claims. Effective immediately, Dr. Felix Carmichael is suspended from all clinical duties, pending a comprehensive internal and external investigation. His patients have been notified and alternative care arrangements are in place. Greater than sincerely, greater than A. Franklin, Director." I forwarded the notice to our survivor network. The eruption of gratitude and hope in their messages reminded me why I'd launched this fight. But celebration was premature. Dr. Carmichael's legal team had already begun mobilizing. A terse cease and desist letter arrived at my inbox, alleging defamation and demanding my public retraction. They threatened a countersuit for reputational harm. March 10th, 10:23 a.m., greater than, your accusations are false and defamatory. We demand removal of all related content within 48 hours or face legal action. My blood ran cold, but I refused to back down. I consulted Marisol Cruz, my attorney, who reassured me, greater than, their threats are a predictable tactic. We have shield laws and verified evidence. Do not remove a single post. Instead, we'll file our civil suit and respond formally. Their intimidation only confirms their desperation. Buoyed by her confidence, I drafted a public statement that afternoon. Greater than, I stand by every word I've shared. My claims are supported by official state board documents, eyewitness accounts from fellow survivors, and documented sessions. Attempts to silence me will not succeed. I posted it across our survivor network, social media channels, and the informational website. Support poured in, from mental health advocates, legal watchers, and everyday readers, moved by the story of a traumatized patient speaking truth to power. Expanding the survivor network. With our foundation solid, Talia and I turned attention to bolstering the online Survivor Summit into an ongoing support and advocacy platform. We established 1. Weekly virtual meetings, hosted by volunteer clinicians unaffiliated with Carmichael to discuss coping strategies and share updates. 2. Resource library. On the website, we uploaded template complaint letters, guides for privacy protection, and contact information for relevant regulatory bodies. 3. Legal support forums, where Marisol and pro bono attorneys answered questions about civil suits, protective orders, and licensing complaints. 4. Safe referral system, ensuring survivors seeking therapy could verify credentials and avoid predatory practitioners. By week's end, our mailing list topped 450 survivors. Many had experienced similar manipulation under Carmichael's other aliases. One former patient from another state sent a scanned copy of an illicitly recorded session where Carmichael coached her to break up her marriage under false pretenses, a file that mirrored my own ordeal. That same evening, I delivered a keynote address at our second virtual summit. Greater than, we turned our pain into power. Each document you share, each story you speak, weakens his hold. Together, we erect a barrier against future predators. No more silence. Participants responded with gratitude and renewed energy, filing the civil suit. On March 15th, Marisol and I met at her office to finalize the civil complaint against Carmichael/Kade. We asserted 3 counts. 1. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, documented sessions in which he manipulated grief and undermined autonomy. 2. Breach of confidentiality and privacy, unauthorized access to phone logs, emails, and recorded conversations. 3. Fraud and unlicensed practice, operating under a false identity in multiple jurisdictions. Marisol guided me through each exhibit. Transcripts from my diary reviews, audio clips where he gaslit me, the State Board's PDF records of Dr. Kade's prior discipline, and screenshots of his cease and desist letter. Each piece built an undeniable mosaic of misconduct. We filed the complaint in Riverside County Court. Within hours, I received confirmation. Case No. 2025 CV 1127. The next step would be serving the defendant and scheduling a preliminary hearing. The wheels of justice had begun to turn, confronting intimidation. 3 days later, a disguised number flashed on my phone. Greater than, stop this or you'll regret it. My chest tightened. I pressed the call button, but no one answered. The message echoed the same terror tactics Carmichael's team used. I forwarded it to Marisol and the ADA's office. She replied, greater than, keep all messages. We'll include these as evidence of witness intimidation. You're doing the right thing. I took a deep breath and posted an update on the Survivor Forum, warning others about potential harassment and reminding them to preserve all communications. Licensing Board hearing. Meanwhile, the State Licensing Board scheduled a formal disciplinary hearing for April 5th. The notice informed me that I could testify legally anonymously if I wished. I chose to reveal my identity. I wanted Carmichael to face the full weight of his actions. On the morning of the hearing, I arrived at the board's austere hearing room, wood-paneled walls, a semicircle of chairs for panel members, and a witness stand under bright lights. Marisol and I sat together. Behind us, a handful of survivors filed in under concealed names. When my turn came, I took the stand and delivered a concise statement. Greater than, I'm Eliana Rivers. Over 7 months, Dr. Felix Carmichael manipulated my grief, accessed my private communications without consent, and practiced therapy under a false identity. I submit official records from the licensing board that disciplined Dr. Samuel Kade, his former persona, for the same abuses. I urge this board to revoke any licensure he holds and bar him from future practice. After my testimony, the board members examined the exhibits, licensing transcripts, PDFs of hearings, video clips of Carmichael's recorded sessions, and printed email trails. One stern board member asked a follow-up. Greater than, Ms. Rivers, did Dr. Carmichael ever warn you of any risks in following his therapeutic exercises? I shook my head. No. He presented each directive as essential for my healing, though many felt invasive or harmful. Another asked, were you aware of his prior disciplinary record before your sessions? I replied, no, he never disclosed his history. I learned it only through independent research. With my testimony concluded, survivors offered additional written statements. Board members conferred quietly. Then Chairman Walters announced, greater than, based on the evidence and multiple verified complaints, the board finds Dr. Carmichael/Samuel Kade guilty of unprofessional conduct, unlicensed practice, and client endangerment. We hereby revoke his license, issue a cease and desist from any counseling activity, and refer this matter to law enforcement for potential criminal charges. The gavel fell. A heavy silence gave way to a soft wave of relief among survivors. I exhaled so deeply, I felt the tension drain from my limbs. Press coverage. Within days, local news outlets picked up the story. Disgraced therapist stripped of license after harrowing abuse claims. Journalists quoted my testimony and the board's decision. Social media buzzed with supportive comments and links to our survivor network. An investigative reporter contacted me for a follow-up. Greater than Ms. Rivers, what message do you have for other victims? I replied, greater than, you are not alone. No one has the right to exploit your vulnerability. Speak out. Together we create safety and accountability for everyone seeking help. Her article ran with my words as the headline. The visibility further pressured Carmichael's associates to cooperate with law enforcement. Preparing for criminal investigation. While the board's decision was final, criminal charges still loomed. The ADA began subpoenaing Carmichael's digital records, phone logs, and witness interviews. His former clinic manager, interviewed under subpoena, admitted to shredding files at Kade's instruction. Every shred admitted as fact strengthened the prosecutor's case. I met with the assistant district attorney's team to review evidence. Server metadata, IP logs tied to unauthorized phone access, victim statements. They assured me that a grand jury would likely return indictments for identity fraud, unauthorized computer access, and witness intimidation. Walking out of the DA's office, I felt the full weight of justice in motion. The predator who'd preyed upon me and dozens of others would finally face consequences. Personal reflections. That evening, I sat in my family's renovated sunroom with my mother. The golden light of dusk filtered through sheer curtains. Vivian placed her hand on mine. I'm so proud of you, Eliana. You turned your pain into purpose. I smiled, tears in my eyes. It wasn't easy, but I couldn't let him hurt anyone else. We embraced, a mother and daughter strengthened by shared resilience rather than manufactured exercises. Update 3. The courthouse steps were slick with morning dew as I climbed toward the grand jury hearing. My hands trembled in the cool air, but the determination that had carried me this far steadied my pulse. Federal marshals ushered me through a side door into the hushed hush of the grand jury room, a chamber of polished wood, high ceilings, and solemn faces. 12 jurors sat behind a long U-shaped table. The prosecutor's team stood nearby with stacks of binders. When I took the oath and mounted the witness stand, the prosecutor's first question was simple. Ms. Rivers, describe how you first realized Dr. Carmichael was not who he claimed to be. I closed my eyes briefly, recalling the shredded clinic files, the alias Samuel Kade, the invasive exercises. I spoke clearly of my father's death, my turn to therapy, and the creeping unease as his prompts grew controlling. I detailed the midnight server raid with Talia's IT contact, the forged credentials, and the PDF of Kade's prior disciplinary hearing. A screen lit up behind the prosecutor with Exhibit A, the voicemail I'd recorded. Kade's measured voice instructing me to prove your vulnerability. The jurors leaned forward as Serena's trembling plea played. I watched their eyes, grateful for their empathy. Next, the prosecutor displayed Exhibit B, an email chain showing Dr. Carmichael instructing his manager to shred patient notes. They reviewed metadata proving the email's authenticity. Each piece of evidence landed like another nail in his coffin. During cross-examination, the assistant U.S. attorney asked, "Did you ever receive any financial compensation for bringing these allegations forward?" I shook my head. My only gain was reclaiming my life. They pressed on timelines, coaxing me to confirm exact dates of sessions and file timestamps. I answered each question with as much precision as possible, my earlier preparation guiding me through technical details without faltering. After 2 hours, the jurors excused me. I exited the room into a corridor lined with solemn portraits of past judges, heart pounding with relief and anticipation. Outside the courthouse, Lucas waited, his relief palpable in his embrace. "You were incredible," he whispered. I managed a tired smile. "We're not done yet." The following week brought word that the grand jury had returned an indictment. Charges of interstate fraud, racketeering, and unauthorized computer access against Samuel Kade, alias Felix Carmichael, were formally filed in federal court. The press release listed counts stemming directly from my testimony and the survivor's evidence. Headlines exploded. Therapist exposed as serial abuser faces federal charges. Our survivor network buzzed with cautious celebration. Meanwhile, Marisol prepared for pre-trial motions in my civil suit. Dr. Carmichael's defense team sought to dismiss key exhibits as tainted by my personal blog posts. We gathered affidavits from licensed experts, attesting to the authenticity of the licensing board transcripts and email metadata. I rehearsed my deposition testimony at Marisol's office, scrolling through transcripts of therapy sessions and practicing concise answers. A deposition day arrived in July. I sat across from a defense attorney in a cramped conference room. Under oath, I recounted the timeline of my sessions, the moment I discovered his alias, and the distress he inflicted. His counsel attempted to paint me as overly emotional, but Marisol objected, redirecting the focus to the undeniable documentary evidence. The defense's attempts to undermine my credibility crumbled under the weight of public records and multiple corroborating witnesses. Outside the courthouse afterward, a reporter approached. "Ms. Rivers, what do you say to those who doubt they can stand up to someone in power?" I paused, then replied resolutely, "Everyone has a voice. When someone betrays trust, speaking out is the only path to safety and justice." By late summer, preparations for the criminal trial were underway. Jury selection in a neighboring district, a precaution due to local media coverage, began in August. I attended a few proceedings behind a one-way glass, witnessing prospective jurors screened for impartiality. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful, a chance to see Kade held fully accountable. At home, I returned to my healing work. I resumed sessions with a licensed therapist, this time guided by transparent ethics. I volunteered with a campus mental health coalition, sharing my story in panel discussions on safe practice guidelines. My mother and I hosted a small gathering under the oak tree, celebrating the progress we'd made. Our bond no longer choreographed by someone else's agenda, but genuine and unforced. As September's leaves began to fall, I stood again before another courtroom, this time as a witness in the civil trial for emotional distress and fraud. The jury listened as I described the personal cost: trust shattered, privacy violated, and months lost to fear. When the defense tried once more to challenge my motives, Marisol rose to demand the full record, session recordings, patient complaints, and the state board's revocation decision. The judge ruled in our favor on several motions, admitting the evidence and allowing expert testimony on psychological harm. The trial would continue into November, but the tide had turned. The legal system recognized the gravity of his abuse. Walking out into the crisp autumn air after that hearing, I felt a profound sense of purpose. I had started therapy to heal a broken heart, only to uncover a predator in the guise of a healer. Yet by exposing him, I had sparked a movement, empowering survivors, forcing legislative scrutiny, and strengthening professional safeguards. I texted Talia, "He can never harm another soul." Her reply, "We did it." As I looked toward the courthouse steps one last time, I realized my journey was both ending and beginning anew, from victim to advocate, from isolated grief to communal strength. The road ahead would include sentencing, reparations, and my continued work supporting survivors. But for today, I pause to breathe in freedom and hope. Update 4. As autumn settled more deeply, the final chapters of my struggle with Dr. Felix Carmichael, alias Samuel Kade, came into focus. Jury selection for his federal trial had concluded in a neighboring district the previous week, and opening statements were scheduled for early October. Every morning, I reviewed my testimony notes and affirmations from survivors, steel in my resolve. Trial opening. On October 4th, I stepped into the federal courtroom, an austere hall of stone and oak, with Marisol at my side and Lucas watching from the gallery. The 8-week trial would determine whether Kade truly faced justice for his crimes. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Delgado, delivered a concise opening. "Greater than ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will hear evidence of a man who exploited vulnerable patients under the guise of therapy. Dr. Kade orchestrated a pattern of manipulation, data theft, and fraud across state lines. Over the coming days, we will present recordings, emails, and witness testimony, including that of Eliana Rivers, showing how he twisted trust into coercion." Across the aisle, Kade's defense attorney spoke calmly. "Greater than members of the jury, Dr. Kade is a devoted therapist who made mistakes but never maliciously harmed a single patient. These allegations stem from misunderstandings and disgruntled clients seeking attention. We trust you will find the evidence insufficient for the severe charges alleged." I felt the weight of their words but knew the truth, and the documents would speak louder. Key testimony. My day in the witness box came on October 10th. I took the oath and began. "Greater than, my name is Eliana Rivers. After my father's death, I sought help from Dr. Carmichael. Over 7 months, he instructed me to perform invasive psycho-emotional exercises, recording private conversations, sharing phone logs, and rewriting my relationship with my mother in sessions that left me more distressed than healed." The prosecutor displayed Exhibit C, a side-by-side playback of 2 recorded sessions, one in which I described Mom's tears, the next in which Kade mocked my vulnerability. The jury winced. Evidence continued, logs showing unauthorized access to my email and phone records, and the PDF of the licensing board's disciplinary report. Under cross-examination, defense counsel tried to portray me as overly dependent. He asked, "Ms. Rivers, didn't you voluntarily share your personal data?" I replied firmly, "He never explained the full scope of data collection, nor did I consent to having every call and email scrutinized for his benefit." Expert witnesses, licensed psychologists, testified about the hallmark signs of psychological exploitation, blurring boundaries, creating dependency, and gaslighting. Their conclusions matched our experiences. Survivors from other states spoke via video link, recounting eerily parallel stories under Kade's various aliases. By mid-November, the prosecution rested. The defense called only one character witness, an old colleague swearing to Kade's competence. But when pressed, the witness admitted limited interactions and no first-hand knowledge of his controversial methods. Verdict and sentence. On November 18th, after 3 days of jury deliberations, everyone returned to the courtroom. The 4-person rows. Greater than, we, the jury, find Samuel Kade guilty on all counts: racketeering, interstate fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized access to protected communications. A wave of relief washed over me. The courtroom vibrated with hushed applause from supporters. Judge Harlow scheduled sentencing for January. On January 12th, the courtroom was cold but resolute. Kade appeared frail under the weight of his reputation's collapse. The prosecutor detailed the harm he'd inflicted: emotional breakdowns, financial losses, and deep scars on dozens of patients. When Kade spoke, his voice trembled. "Greater than, I regret any pain caused but never intended malice. I apologize." The judge's gavel fell. "Greater than, for these grave violations, you are sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, and ordered to pay restitution of $450,000 to survivors. May this serve as a warning to those who abuse positions of trust." Kade's shoulders slumped. I exhaled, tears pricking my eyes. Justice, long delayed, had finally been served. Legislative triumph. While Kade faced incarceration, our advocacy bore fruit at the state capitol. The Eliana Rivers Act passed unanimously in December. Key provisions included: 1. Interstate Professional Licensing Database, a real-time national directory of disciplinary actions accessible by regulatory boards and the public. 2. Mandatory reporting of misconduct. Therapists must report any disciplinary action in another state within 30 days. 3. Patient rights education. Standardized disclosures during intake sessions outlining confidentiality boundaries and redress options. 4. Whistleblower protections. Legal shield for patients and staff reporting unethical or illegal therapist conduct. At the bill signing ceremony, I stood beside the governor as he affixed his signature. Cameras flashed. I thought of every survivor whose life this law would protect. My mother among them, watching with pride, rebuilding lives. In the months that followed, my survivor network evolved into a non-profit, Healing Accountability Alliance, providing legal support, peer counseling, and resources for those hurt by mental health professionals. We launched survivor scholarships, grants for therapy with vetted practitioners, public awareness campaigns, workshops in communities and universities about safe therapy practices, policy advisory committees, collaborating with licensing boards to implement ongoing reforms. Our annual conference welcomed hundreds of participants from across the country. Speakers included legislators, legal experts, and survivors sharing recovery journeys. The energy crackled with purpose, personal renewal. Throughout this tumult, my personal healing deepened. Under the guidance of a trusted, licensed counselor, I explored my own resilience and the legacy of my father's gentle strength. I resumed family traditions, annual fishing trips, Sunday dinners, and even began mentoring young people interested in psychology, cautioning them on ethical practice. On the one-year anniversary of my first session with Carmichael, I visited his now-abandoned clinic. The windows were boarded, the water fountain in the waiting room still bubbled quietly. I stood in the empty lobby, feeling a strange peace. The man who had turned my grief into a weapon was gone. In his place stood my own reclaimed life. Epilogue. Winter thawed into spring. My mother and I planted a rose garden in Dad's honor, each bloom a testament to love's endurance. At the center of the garden we placed a small plaque, in memory of Thomas and in celebration of truth. I carried forward the lessons learned: vigilance in vulnerability, community in recovery, and courage in speaking out. Therapy had once been my refuge, then my battleground. Now, it signified balance, my story woven into the broader tapestry of accountability and healing. Eliana's journey from grief to advocacy proves our voices can dismantle abuse and rebuild lives. Have you ever stood up to injustice in healthcare or beyond? Share your story below. I read every comment.